I'm Elena Morrison, and every Sunday dinner at the Ashford estate feels like swallowing broken glass. I stood in their gleaming Charleston kitchen, my son Lucas beside me, watching Victoria Ashford arrange imported cheeses on a marble board while discussing her country club's fundraiser. She didn't look at me. She never did, unless she was delivering a blow. "Elena, be a dear and take these to the dining room," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Not a request, a command. I was the help, dressed in my 6-year-old black dress, the only one nice enough for their Sunday dinners. Lucas's hand found mine. He was 10, but his grip felt older, protective. I squeezed back, forcing a smile. Of course. The dining room was a monument to old Charleston money. Crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of Ashford ancestors, furniture that cost more than my yearly teaching salary. Richard Ashford sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone, his face tight with stress. Cynthia Ashford Barrett, Michael's sister, was already seated with her husband Trevor and their children, Sophia and Oliver. The kids waved at Lucas. At least someone was happy to see us. "Elena?" Victoria's voice followed me like a shadow. "I hope you're not planning to wear that dress to the gala next month. It's rather worn." My chest tightened. The Ashford Foundation Charity Gala, the event of the season. And yes, this was the only dress I owned that came close to appropriate. "I'll figure something out," I said quietly. Cynthia looked up, her smile sharp. "Oh, I have some dresses I'm donating to Goodwill. You're welcome to them. We're about the same size, aren't we?" Her eyes traveled over me, assessing, dismissing. Lucas's jaw clenched. I saw it from the corner of my eye. My sweet boy, watching, always watching. "That's very kind," I said, the words tasting like ash. It wasn't kind. It was calculated cruelty wrapped in charity. Dinner began. Richard carved the roast, Victoria served, and I sat in my designated spot, the one farthest from the head of the table. The conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. Stock portfolios, society events, upcoming trips to the beach house on Kiwa Island. Then Victoria turned to Lucas. "Lucas, darling, how's school? Are you keeping up with your grades?" "Yes, grandmother. I got an A on my art project." "Art?" Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, that's nice. Though perhaps you should focus more on mathematics or science, something practical. Your father was brilliant with numbers." My father. Michael, 3 years gone, and they still wielded his memory like a weapon. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "Lucas is incredibly talented. His art teacher says—" "Speaking of education," Richard interrupted, not even looking at me, "there's been talk about budget cuts to public schools. Elena, you teach at, what was it? Lincoln Elementary?" "Yes, we serve a lot of underprivileged. Cynthia's laugh was light, cutting. "That's one word for it. Trevor, didn't we donate to a much better charter school program, the one that actually produces results?" Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "Cynthia, I don't think—" "Elena has always had a soft spot for lost causes," Victoria said, sipping her wine. "Michael used to worry about that. He'd say, 'Mother, Elena wants to save everyone.' Of course, if he'd married." She stopped herself, but the damage was done. The implication hung in the air like smoke. If he'd married someone appropriate, someone from their world, someone who wasn't me. Lucas's fork clattered against his plate. "My mom is the best teacher at her school. All her students love her." "Of course they do, sweetheart," Victoria said, her tone patronizing. "We're just saying there are better ways to make a difference, ways that don't leave you struggling to make ends meet." My face burned. They knew. They knew exactly how much I struggled, how every month was a calculation of rent versus groceries, how Lucas's private school tuition, paid from Michael's insurance money, left me with nothing. "Elena," Richard said, finally acknowledging me, "Lucas mentioned you're having trouble with your car. If you need assistance, we could help you find something reliable. Maybe something used?" I drive a 15-year-old Honda Civic that rattled when I accelerated. It got me to work. It got Lucas to school. It was enough. "We're fine. Thank you." "Pride," Victoria murmured to Cynthia, loud enough for me to hear. "Michael always said she was too proud to accept help." Lucas stood up abruptly. "May I be excused?" Victoria blinked, surprised. "Dessert hasn't been served yet." "I'm not hungry." His voice was tight, controlled, too controlled for a 10-year-old. "Lucas," I said gently, "please sit down." He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw something that made my heart crack. Anger. Helplessness. The same emotions I swallowed every Sunday, every family gathering, every time they made me feel small. He sat. He always did. Because I taught him to respect his elders, to honor family, to remember that these people loved his father, and they were all he had left of that side of his heritage. The rest of dinner blurred. Dessert was served, conversations continued around me. I smiled when appropriate, nodded, stayed silent. The role I'd perfected for 3 years. As we drove home in my rattling Honda Civic, Lucas stared out the window. Our apartment was 20 minutes from the Ashford estate, across the bridge, in a neighborhood where houses had chain-link fences instead of wrought iron. "Mom," he said quietly as I unlocked our apartment door, "why don't you let them talk to you like that?" I stopped, my key halfway in the lock. "Lucas, they're mean to you every time, and you just take it." I turned to face him, my beautiful boy, with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin. "Family is complicated, sweetheart. They loved your dad. They're hurting." "So they hurt you?" "No, they just..." I struggled for words. "They don't understand our life, but they're your grandparents, your aunt. They're your connection to your father. Dad wouldn't want this." His voice cracked. "He wouldn't want them making you cry." My breath caught. "I don't..." "You hear me." His eyes were wet. "At night, after we come back from their house, I hear you crying in the bathroom." The walls of our small apartment suddenly felt too close, too revealing. I knelt down, taking his hands. "Lucas, I cry because I miss your dad, not because of them." It was a lie. We both knew it. He pulled away, heading to his room. "You always say family is important, but what if family is the problem?"
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She does. Through a gallery in Charleston, but she doesn't paint as much as she should. She's busy taking care of you, teaching. He paused. Taking care of everyone except herself. That afternoon, Grandpa James made sandwiches, not fancy, just good, and we sat in his library. He pulled out a photo album, old-fashioned, leather-bound. "I want to show you something, Lucas. Your heritage." He opened the album. The first photo showed a mansion, massive, surrounded by manicured grounds. This was the Caldwell estate in Brookline. Your great-great-grandfather built it in 1892. He made his fortune in textiles, then diversified into railroads. I stared at the photo. We owned that? Your family still owns property, not that specific estate. We sold it in the 1980s. But the Caldwell family has resources. He turned pages, more photos. My mom as a little girl, dressed in a fancy dress, standing in front of a Christmas tree that must have been 15 feet tall. My mom is a teenager at some formal event, looking uncomfortable in pearls. My grandmother, who I never met, beautiful and elegant. Your mother walked away from this world when she was 22. She chose art school, chose teaching, chose to live on what she earned, not what she inherited. My head spun. But why? We struggle. Mom works so hard just to pay rent. Because she wanted a life that meant something beyond money. She watched her mother, my wife, die of cancer when she was 19. We had all the money in the world and it couldn't save her. After that, Elena couldn't stand the superficiality of it all. The galas, the status games, the people who measured worth in net worth. He closed the album and looked at me directly. Lucas, you need to understand something. When you turn 18, you'll inherit a trust fund, $15 million. It was set up by your great-grandfather, passes to you directly. Your mother can't touch it, won't touch it. She doesn't even like that I'm telling you about it. The room tilted, 15 million. The number was so big it felt fake. The Ashfords, I said slowly, they think we're poor. You are living modestly. Your mother chooses that. But poor? He shook his head. The Caldwell family has wealth that makes the Ashfords look... He stopped himself. I shouldn't compare. But Lucas, your mother's family, your family, has resources they can't imagine. I thought about grandmother Victoria's comments, about Cynthia offering Mom hand-me-down dresses, about Richard suggesting Mom get a used car. They had no idea who my mom really was. Does Mom know I told you? No, and she'd be angry with me if she found out. But Lucas, you're not a baby anymore. You watch, you listen, you see how they treat her. I think you need to know the truth about who you are and where you come from. That night, lying in the guest room with its comfortable bed and view of the Boston skyline, I held the envelope. Inside were documents, legal papers about trusts and investments and inheritance, words I didn't fully understand, but numbers that were very clear. $15 million. I thought about my mom crying in our bathroom after Sunday dinners. I thought about her worn dress, her struggling car, the way she apologized for not being enough. And I thought about the Ashfords with their cutting words and superior smiles, treating my mom like she was nothing. They had no idea who she was. But now, I did. I'm Lucas Morrison, and 2 weeks in Boston changed everything. Back in Charleston, our apartment felt smaller than before. Mom picked me up at the airport, hugging me like I'd been gone months instead of weeks. She looked thinner, more tired. I wanted to tell her what Grandpa James had shown me, but something stopped me. She'd chosen this life, chosen not to tell me about the Caldwell's wealth. There had to be a reason. The next Sunday, we drove to the Ashfords' estate for their summer barbecue. I sat in the passenger seat of Mom's rattling Honda, watching her knuckles turn white on the steering wheel. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked. "You've been quiet since you got back." "Just tired." It wasn't a lie. I was tired. Tired of watching her endure this. The Ashford estate looked different to me now. The wrought iron gates, the circular driveway, the columns on the front porch. It all tried so hard to look impressive. But I'd seen Grandpa James's brownstone, understated and real. This was performance. Desperate performance. "Elena, Lucas," Cynthia called from the back patio, waving a glass of white wine. "Come join us. We're just setting up the buffet." Mom had brought homemade potato salad. She'd spent hours on it last night, testing the recipe. Cynthia took the bowl without looking at it, setting it at the end of the table next to the expensive catered items. Lobster rolls, imported cheeses, sushi platters. "How sweet," Cynthia said. "Homemade? Trevor, doesn't Elena's potato salad look rustic?" Trevor Barrett shifted uncomfortably. "It looks great, Elena." I watched Trevor's face. He looked embarrassed. Interesting. Grandpa James had taught me to observe, really observe. Trevor didn't agree with his wife's cruelty. He just didn't stop it. Grandmother Victoria swept onto the patio in a designer sundress,
her jewelry glinting in the afternoon sun, but I noticed things I hadn't before. Her earrings were beautiful, but I'd seen similar ones in Grandpa James's albums. Estate jewelry from the 1960s, not new. And when I looked closer at the furniture around the pool, I saw the cushions were faded. The metal frames have rust spots someone had tried to paint over. They were maintaining appearances. Barely. Richard, Victoria's voice had an edge. I thought you were handling the call about the Market Street property. Grandfather Richard stood near the grill, phone pressed to his ear, his face red. I'll call you back, he hung up. His jaw was tight. Problems? Victoria asked, her smile brittle. Nothing I can't handle. But I heard. I was standing close enough. The bank is calling in the note underwater by at least $2 million, need to liquidate. Grandfather Richard was in trouble. Financial trouble. I filed this information away, sitting in a corner chair, my plate of food untouched, watching everything unfold like a play where I finally understood the subtext. Mom stood by the potato salad, trying to make conversation with other guests, Victoria's friends mostly, women in expensive sundresses with expensive sunglasses, drinking expensive wine while looking at my mom like she was a curiosity. The poor widow, how tragic, how inappropriate she was for Michael. Elena dear, Margaret Pemberton, Victoria's best friend, said loudly, I've been meaning to ask, where did you get that sundress? It's very colorful. Mom looked down at her dress. It was from Target, 5 years old. I knew that because I'd been with her when she bought it, watching her agonize over spending $30. Just a little shop, Mom said vaguely. Well, it's certainly cheerful. Cheerful meant cheap. Everyone knew it. I stood up, walking to where my younger cousins, Sophia and Oliver, were playing cornhole. They were 8 and 6, innocent, happy to see me. Lucas, Sophia ran over. Want to play? Sure. As we played, I stayed close to the house, close enough to overhear. Adults always forgot children had ears. Telling you, Victoria, it's not looking good, I heard Grandfather Richard say through the open study window. The Market Street investment is collapsing. We're over-leveraged. If we don't sell within 6 months, lower your voice, Victoria hissed. No one can know. We might have to sell the Kiowa house. Silence. Then Victoria, absolutely not. Our reputation depends on maintaining our lifestyle. We'll figure out something else. There is no something else, unless, Richard paused, unless we reconsider the plan about Lucas's inheritance from Michael. My hands froze mid-throw. The will is ironclad, Victoria said. Elena has guardianship. Michael made sure of that. But if we could prove she's unfit, unstable financially, she's a public school teacher. By definition, she's struggling financially. We could argue Lucas deserves better, that we could provide more stability. And the money Michael left him would be managed by us, not her. My stomach turned. They were plotting, actually plotting to take me away from my mom, to control my dad's money, all while pretending they were worried about my well-being. Lucas, you okay? Sophia tugged my sleeve. Yeah, I'm fine. Your turn. I walked back to the patio in a daze. Mom was standing alone now, holding a paper plate, looking lost. I wanted to grab her hand, drag her out of here, tell her what I heard. But I didn't, because I remembered what Grandpa James said. Your mother chose this. She has her reasons. That night, back in our apartment, I found Mom in the living room with her laptop, paying bills online. Her face was stressed, that little line between her eyebrows deepening. Mom, I said from the doorway, why do you let them treat you like that? She looked up, surprised. Lucas, we've talked about this. No, really. Why? Dad wouldn't want this. He'd hate how they talk to you. Her eyes filled with tears. Your father loved...
And I did. I paid attention to everything now. The Ashfords' financial desperation, their plot against my mom, their performance of wealth while drowning in debt. I paid attention, and I waited. Because sometimes the best way to protect someone is to know everything, to watch, to learn. and when the time was right, to act. I'm Lucas Morrison, and 3 weeks after returning from Boston, I learned exactly what the Ashfords were planning. It was a Thursday afternoon. Mom was teaching summer school, so I was at the Ashfords estate for what grandmother Victoria called quality time with my grandson. Quality time meant I sat in their library reading while they went about their business, occasionally checking on me to make sure I hadn't broken anything expensive. I'd developed a habit of needing the bathroom at strategic times when adults thought I was out of earshot, times when they had important conversations they assumed children couldn't understand. Today, I'd left my backpack in Grandfather Richard's study. An accident, or so I'd tell them. I went back to retrieve it just as voices drifted through the partially open door. "Can't wait any longer," Grandfather Richard was saying. "The bank wants an answer by next week. We either liquidate assets or they start proceedings." "We're not selling the house." Victoria's voice was steel. "I will not be humiliated in front of Charleston society." "Then what do you propose?" Richard sounded exhausted. "We're hemorrhaging money. The Market Street property is worthless. The Kiowa house has a second mortgage. We're over-leveraged by $3 million. $3 million. The number hit me like a punch. They were desperate, truly desperate. "The answer is obvious," Cynthia's voice joined them. "I hadn't realized she was there. Lucas's inheritance from Michael. That's nearly $2 million in the trust Michael left. If we can gain legal control..." "How?" Victoria asked. "Michael's will is clear. Elena has full guardianship." "We challenge her fitness as a guardian," Cynthia said. I could hear the smile in her voice. "Think about it. She's barely making ends meet, lives in a tiny apartment, drives a car that should be in a junkyard, works at a public school in a dangerous neighborhood. We argue Lucas deserves better, that we can provide stability and proper upbringing." My hands clenched around my backpack straps. "We'd need evidence," Richard said slowly. "Proof she's unfit." "We have it," Cynthia said. 3 years of her struggling financially. Look at how she dresses Lucas in clearance clothes. How she brings homemade dishes to family gatherings because she can't afford to contribute properly. She's clearly stressed, probably depressed. We could argue she's alienating Lucas from us. "Is she?" Victoria asked sharply. "Is Lucas pulling away?" "Not yet, but he will. Elena's poisoning him against us slowly. I see the way he watches us now, like he's judging. She's turning him into her." My heart pounded. They were talking about me. About my mom, twisting everything into a weapon. "There's something else," Richard said. "The investigator I hired to look into Elena's background came back with nothing useful. No criminal record, no debt, no scandal. She's clean." "Too clean?" Cynthia suggested. "Maybe that's the angle. She's hiding something." Victoria laughed, bitter. "The woman is an open book. She has no secrets because she has no life beyond scraping by and working with troubled children. That's not hiding something. That's being exactly who she appears to be. A nobody." The word cut through me. Nobody. My mom, who'd walked away from millions to live authentically. My mom, who taught children others had given up on. My mom, who painted beauty in our tiny apartment when she had spare moments. My mom, who sacrificed everything to honor my dad's memory by keeping me connected to these people. Nobody. "The charity gala," Victoria said suddenly. "That's our opportunity. 3 weeks away. Everyone who matters in Charleston will be there. We announce the guardianship challenge then. Frame it as concern for Lucas's welfare. The optics will be in our favor. Prominent Charleston family versus struggling single mother." "We'll need an attorney," Richard said. "A good one." "I've already consulted with Mitchell and Ross. They specialize in family law. They believe we have a strong case, particularly given our financial resources versus hers." Their financial resources. My stomach twisted. They had no idea. No idea that my mom came from wealth that made theirs look like pocket change. No idea that sitting on my bed at home in an envelope from Grandpa James were documents proving I was worth $15 million. But my mom had chosen not to use that.
chosen to let them mock her, belittle her, plot against her. Why? What about Michael? Cynthia asked suddenly. Using his memory? What about it? Victoria's voice turned icy. My son married beneath him. That woman trapped him with her arts and crafts and her poor little teacher act. Michael would be alive today if he'd married someone appropriate, someone who understood our world. I couldn't breathe. They were blaming my mom for my dad's death, for a sailing accident, for something no one could have prevented. If Michael were here, Victoria continued, he'd want Lucas raised properly, with standards, with expectations. Not in some cramped apartment where the child has to share a bedroom with, what did Elena call it? Her art supplies? The gala will be perfect timing, Richard said. We filed the paperwork the morning after, maximum impact. And Elena? Cynthia asked. What will she do? What can she? Victoria's voice was smug. She has no resources, no social standing, no way to fight us. She'll fold or we'll crush her in court. Either way, we get access to Lucas's inheritance and we solve our financial problems. Footsteps approached the door. I bolted, racing down the hallway, my backpack bouncing on my shoulder. I made it to the library, threw myself into a chair, grabbed a book, and tried to look like I'd been there all along. My hands shook. The book's words blurred. They were going to take me from my mom. They were going to use my dad's memory, use my supposed welfare to get their hands on money while hiding their own financial collapse. They were going to publicly humiliate her at the gala in front of all their Charleston society friends, then file guardianship papers. And they thought she couldn't fight back. They thought she was nobody. I pulled out my phone, hands still trembling, and texted Grandpa James. I need to know everything. They're going after Mom. The gala. 3 weeks. His response came quickly. Call me tonight. Alone. I sat in the Ashfords' library, surrounded by their books and their furniture and their desperate performance of wealth, and I made a decision. They'd underestimated my mom for 3 years. They'd underestimated me. And at their precious gala, in front of all their Charleston society friends, I was going to make sure they understood exactly who they'd been mocking. I'm Elena Morrison, and the 3 weeks before the Ashford Family Foundation Charity Gala felt like counting down to an execution. Victoria had called with her request. Request being generous term for what was essentially a command. Elena, dear, she said over the phone, her voice dripping false sweetness. I know you're not busy with summer school anymore, and we're rather short-handed with the gala preparations. Would you mind terribly coming by to help? Nothing strenuous, just some light setup work. Light setup work meant 14-hour days assembling centerpieces, steaming 300 tablecloths, arranging seating charts for people who didn't want me there. It meant working alongside the actual hired staff, caterers and event planners, who treated me with more respect than my late husband's family. Lucas came with me most days. I couldn't afford babysitters, and he insisted on helping. He'd been different since returning from Boston. Quieter, more watchful. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at his phone, texting someone. When I asked, he said it was Grandpa James. They'd bonded during his visit, apparently. Part of me was grateful. My son needed male role models. Part of me worried about what my father might have told him. My dad respected my choices, but I knew he thought I was making things harder than they needed to be. Mom, you don't have to do this, Lucas said, watching me wrestle with a particularly stubborn tablecloth at the venue. The historic Hibernian Hall was beautiful. Chandeliers, ornate architecture, the kind of place where Charleston's elite felt at home. I felt like an imposter. It's fine, sweetheart. Almost done. No, I mean, he looked at me with those serious 10-year-old eyes. You don't have to keep doing everything they ask. You don't owe them anything. I sat back on my heels, surprised. Lucas, they're family. Are they? Before I could answer, Victoria's voice echoed across the hall. Elena, the centerpieces in the front look uneven. Can you fix them? Lucas's jaw clenched. That look, so much like his father when Michael was angry, flashed across his face. "I'll handle it," I said quietly, touching his shoulder. "Why don't you take a break outside?" He didn't move, just kept watching as I walked over to fix centerpieces that looked perfectly fine, adjusting flowers that didn't need adjusting, smiling through Victoria's critical gaze. Margaret Pemberton, Victoria's best friend and Charleston's gossip queen, appeared beside her. "Elena, how lovely to see you working so hard. Tell me, have you found a dress for the gala yet?"
They're abusive assholes. Her voice softened. Honey, I love you, but watching you kill yourself to make these people happy is breaking my heart. Lucas sees it too. He asked me the other day if I thought you were okay. My chest tightened. He asked you? He's worried about you. He's 10 years old, and he's worried about his mother because he watches them tear you down every single week, and you just take it. His father made me promise. Michael is dead. Marissa said it gently but firmly. He's been dead for 3 years. And I loved him, Elena. He was a good man. But he's not here to see what his family is doing to you. If he were, he'd be furious. Would he? Sometimes I wasn't sure. Michael had loved me fiercely, but he'd also loved his family, flaws and all. He'd walked the line between both worlds. I'd never figured out how. My phone buzzed. A text from David Chen, Marissa's brother, the attorney I'd consulted once before when the Ashfords started making noises about Lucas's education. "Elena, can you call me? Something has come up regarding the Ashford family. It's important." Marissa read my face. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. Your brother wants to talk." I called him right there. He answered on the second ring. "Elena, hi. Look, this is delicate, but I've heard through legal channels that the Ashfords are consulting with a guardianship attorney, Mitchell and Ross. They specialize in contested custody cases." The coffee shop sounds faded. "What?" "I don't have details, but you need to be prepared. If they're consulting that firm, they're planning something, probably a challenge to your guardianship." Marissa grabbed the phone from my numb fingers. "David? What exactly are you saying?" I couldn't hear his response over the roaring in my ears. Guardianship challenge. They wanted to take Lucas from me. Actually take him. Marissa handed back the phone, her face pale. "Elena, I have to go." I stood, grabbing my purse. "I need to get home. Elena, wait!" But I was already moving, out the door to my rattling Honda, driving through Charleston's historic streets toward our apartment. My hands shook on the steering wheel. A guardianship challenge. On what grounds? I was a good mother. Lucas was healthy, happy, doing well in school. What could they possibly... My finances, of course. My modest income, our small apartment, my aging car. They'd paint me as unstable, struggling, unable to provide the kind of life an Ashford child deserved. I pulled into our apartment complex, sat in the car, and let myself cry. Really cry. The kind of crying I usually saved for nights when Lucas was asleep, when I could muffle the sound with a pillow, when no one could see me fall apart. I was so tired, so impossibly tired of fighting to be enough, of absorbing their cruelty because Michael had asked me to keep Lucas connected to his family, of pretending I was fine when I was drowning. My phone rang. Marissa. "I'm coming over," she said. "Don't argue." She arrived 20 minutes later with Chinese takeout and a fierce expression. Lucas was at a friend's house, a rare sleepover I'd arranged so I could finish Gallup prep tomorrow without him watching me be humiliated. We sat on my secondhand couch, eating lo mein from containers, and I told her everything. The years of comments, the constant comparison to Michael's ex-girlfriend, the way they made me feel small and worthless and wrong. "You have to fight back," Marissa said. "Whatever they're planning, you fight." "With what? David's services aren't free. Guardianship battles can cost thousands, tens of thousands.
I barely make rent." "Then we'll figure it out. David might work pro bono. I can help financially." No. I couldn't take money from my best friend. Couldn't take money from anyone. Because then I'd be exactly what they accused me of being. Someone who couldn't make it on her own. Marissa grabbed my hands. "Elena, pride is not worth losing your son over." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I thought about calling my father. One phone call and this would all go away. James Caldwell could hire attorneys that would make Mitchell and Ross look like a storefront operation. He could expose exactly who I was, where I came from, what I'd walked away from. But that would mean admitting I couldn't do this on my own. It would mean using the very thing, wealth, status, power, that I'd rejected. It would make everything I'd built, everything I'd chosen, meaningless. I'd walked away from my trust fund because I believed worth wasn't measured in bank accounts, because I'd watched my mother's money fail to save her from cancer, because I wanted to build a life that meant something beyond what I inherited. If I called my father now, if I used the Caldwell name to fight the Ashfords, wouldn't that prove them right? That I needed money all along? I looked around our small apartment. Lucas's artwork taped to the fridge, my paintings stacked in the corner, our books, our photos, our life. Modest, but ours. Built on what we'd earned, what we'd created. Was it enough? Was choosing authenticity over wealth worth it if I lost Lucas in the process? I didn't know anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas at his sleepover. "Love you, Mom. Everything's going to be okay, I promise." How did he know I needed that? How did he always know? I texted back, "Love you too, sweetheart. See you tomorrow." Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my art supplies and painted until 3 a.m., my hands covered in acrylics, my heart pouring onto canvas, all the anger and fear and grief I couldn't speak aloud. The gala was in 6 days. Whatever the Ashfords were planning, whatever they'd plotted in their study while sipping wine and counting their social standing above my worth, it would come to a head there. And I had no idea how to stop it. But across town, in his bedroom, Lucas Morrison sat with documents spread before him and a phone pressed to his ear, talking to his grandfather, James, planning something I didn't know about yet. Something that would change everything. I'm Elena Morrison, and the Ashford Family Foundation Charity Gala was supposed to be my moment to fade into the background. Instead, it became the night everything shattered. The historic Hibernian Hall glowed with chandeliers and Charleston's elite, 200 guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. I stood near the entrance in my 6-year-old black dress, the same one I'd worn to every formal event since Michael died, watching Lucas adjust his tie. He'd been quiet during the drive, clutching a small folder he wouldn't explain. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked. His eyes met mine. 10 years old, but looking decades older. "I'm fine, Mom. Are you?" Before I could answer, Victoria descended. She wore emerald silk that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her smile sharp as glass. "Elena, Lucas, how lovely you both look." The pause before lovely said everything. "Elena, dear, would you mind checking on the coat room? I think the attendant reads guidance." Not a guest, the help. Always the help. "Of course," I murmured. Lucas's hand found mine, squeezing tight. "Mom." "It's fine," I whispered. "Go find your cousins. Have fun." I spent the cocktail hour doing Victoria's bidding, fetching ice, directing lost guests, smiling through comments about my vintage dress, my brave choice to wear such a simple style. Margaret Pemberton cornered me by the bar, champagne in hand, voice pitched loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. "Elena, I've been meaning to ask, where did you shop for tonight?
I'm always curious about budget-friendly options. My face burned. Just a little boutique. How resourceful. We could all learn from your thriftiness. Her eyes glittered. Dinner was worse. I sat at a table near the back. Not with the Ashfords, despite being family. Lucas was at the main table with Victoria, Richard, and Cynthia. I watched him pick at his food, his eyes scanning the room like he was searching for something. Then came Victoria's speech. She stood at the podium, elegant and composed, speaking about the Ashford Family Foundation's charitable work, about legacy, about her late son, Michael. My son, Michael, believed in giving back. He was taken from us too soon, leaving behind memories we cherish. Behind her, a slideshow played. Michael at graduations, Michael at charity events, Michael with his ex-girlfriend, both of them laughing at some yacht club function. More photos. Michael with Cynthia, with his parents, with childhood friends. One photo of me. Just one. Our wedding day, tucked near the end, barely visible before the slideshow moved on. 3 years of marriage. One photo. I watched Lucas watching the screen. His jaw clenched tighter with each image that excluded his mother.
They're abusive assholes. Her voice softened. Honey, I love you, but watching you kill yourself to make these people happy is breaking my heart. Lucas sees it too. He asked me the other day if I thought you were okay. My chest tightened. He asked you? He's worried about you. He's 10 years old, and he's worried about his mother because he watches them tear you down every single week, and you just take it. His father made me promise. Michael is dead. Marissa said it gently but firmly. He's been dead for 3 years. And I loved him, Elena. He was a good man. But he's not here to see what his family is doing to you. If he were, he'd be furious. Would he? Sometimes I wasn't sure. Michael had loved me fiercely, but he'd also loved his family, flaws and all. He'd walked the line between both worlds. I'd never figured out how. My phone buzzed. A text from David Chen, Marissa's brother, the attorney I'd consulted once before when the Ashfords started making noises about Lucas's education. Elena, can you call me? Something has come up regarding the Ashford family. It's important. Marissa read my face. What's wrong? I don't know. Your brother wants to talk. I called him right there. He answered on the second ring. Elena, hi. Look, this is delicate, but I've heard through legal channels that the Ashfords are consulting with a guardianship attorney, Mitchell and Ross. They specialize in contested custody cases. The coffee shop sounds faded. What? I don't have details, but you need to be prepared. If they're consulting that firm, they're planning something. Probably a challenge to your guardianship. Marissa grabbed the phone from my numb fingers. David? What exactly are you saying? I couldn't hear his response over the roaring in my ears. Guardianship challenge. They wanted to take Lucas from me. Actually take him. Marissa handed back the phone, her face pale. Elena, I have to go. I stood, grabbing my purse. I need to get home. Elena, wait! But I was already moving, out the door to my rattling Honda, driving through Charleston's historic streets toward our apartment. My hands shook on the steering wheel. A guardianship challenge. On what grounds? I was a good mother. Lucas was healthy, happy, doing well in school. What could they possibly... My finances, of course. My modest income, our small apartment, my aging car. They'd paint me as unstable, struggling, unable to provide the kind of life an Ashford child deserved. I pulled into our apartment complex, sat in the car, and let myself cry. Really cry. The kind of crying I usually saved for nights when Lucas was asleep, when I could muffle the sound with a pillow, when no one could see me fall apart. I was so tired, so impossibly tired of fighting to be enough,
of absorbing their cruelty because Michael had asked me to keep Lucas connected to his family, of pretending I was fine when I was drowning. My phone rang. Marissa. "I'm coming over," she said. "Don't argue." She arrived 20 minutes later with Chinese takeout and a fierce expression. Lucas was at a friend's house, a rare sleepover I'd arranged so I could finish Gallup prep tomorrow without him watching me be humiliated. We sat on my secondhand couch, eating lo mein from containers, and I told her everything. The years of comments, the constant comparison to Michael's ex-girlfriend, the way they made me feel small and worthless and wrong. "You have to fight back," Marissa said. "Whatever they're planning, you fight." "With what? David's services aren't free. Guardianship battles can cost thousands, tens of thousands. I barely make rent." "Then we'll figure it out. David might work pro bono. I can help financially." No. I couldn't take money from my best friend, couldn't take money from anyone, because then I'd be exactly what they accused me of being, someone who couldn't make it on her own. Marissa grabbed my hands. "Elena, pride is not worth losing your son over." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I thought about calling my father. One phone call and this would all go away. James Caldwell could hire attorneys that would make Mitchell and Ross look like a storefront operation. He could expose exactly who I was, where I came from, what I'd walked away from. But that would mean admitting I couldn't do this on my own. It would mean using the very thing, wealth, status, power, that I'd rejected. It would make everything I'd built, everything I'd chosen, meaningless. I'd walked away from my trust fund because I believed worth wasn't measured in bank accounts, because I'd watched my mother's money fail to save her from cancer, because I wanted to build a life that meant something beyond what I inherited. If I called my father now, if I used the Caldwell name to fight the Ashfords, wouldn't that prove them right? That I needed money all along? I looked around our small apartment. Lucas's artwork taped to the fridge, my paintings stacked in the corner, our books, our photos, our life. Modest, but ours. Built on what we'd earned, what we'd created. Was it enough? Was choosing authenticity over wealth worth it if I lost Lucas in the process? I didn't know anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas at his sleepover. "Love you, Mom. Everything's going to be okay, I promise." How did he know I needed that? How did he always know? I texted back, "Love you too, sweetheart. See you tomorrow." Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my art supplies and painted until 3 a.m., my hands covered in acrylics, my heart pouring onto canvas, all the anger and fear and grief I couldn't speak aloud. The gala was in 6 days. Whatever the Ashfords were planning, whatever they'd plotted in their study while sipping wine and counting their social standing above my worth, it would come to a head there. And I had no idea how to stop it. But across town, in his bedroom, Lucas Morrison sat with documents spread before him and a phone pressed to his ear, talking to his grandfather, James, planning something I didn't know about yet. Something that would change everything. I'm Elena Morrison, and the Ashford Family Foundation Charity Gala was supposed to be my moment to fade into the background. Instead, it became the night everything shattered. The historic Hibernian Hall glowed with chandeliers and Charleston's elite, 200 guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. I stood near the entrance in my 6-year-old black dress, the same one I'd worn to every formal event since Michael died, watching Lucas adjust his tie. He'd been quiet during the drive, clutching a small folder he wouldn't explain. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked. His eyes met mine. 10 years old, but looking decades older. "I'm fine, Mom. Are you?" Before I could answer, Victoria descended. She wore emerald silk that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her smile sharp as glass. Elena, Lucas, how lovely you both look. The pause before lovely said everything. Elena, dear, would you mind checking on the coat room? I think the attendant reads guidance. Not a guest, the help. Always the help. Of course, I murmured. Lucas's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Mom. It's fine, I whispered. Go find your cousins, have fun. I spent the cocktail hour doing Victoria's bidding, fetching ice, directing lost guests, smiling through comments about my vintage dress, my brave choice to wear such a simple style. Margaret Pemberton cornered me by the bar, champagne in hand, voice pitched loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. Elena, I've been meaning to ask, where did you shop for tonight? I'm always curious about budget-friendly options. My face burned. Just a little boutique. How resourceful. We could all learn from your thriftiness. Her eyes glittered. Dinner was worse. I sat at a table near the back. Not with the Ashfords, despite being family. Lucas was at the main table with Victoria, Richard, and Cynthia. I watched him pick at his food, his eyes scanning the room like he was searching for something. Then came Victoria's speech. She stood at the podium, elegant and composed, speaking about the Ashford Family Foundation's charitable work, about legacy, about her late son, Michael. My son, Michael, believed in giving back. He was taken from us too soon, leaving behind memories we cherish. Behind her, a slideshow played. Michael at graduations, Michael at charity events, Michael with his ex-girlfriend, both of them laughing at some yacht club function. More photos. Michael with Cynthia, with his parents, with childhood friends. One photo of me. Just one. Our wedding day, tucked near the end, barely visible before the slideshow moved on. 3 years of marriage. One photo. I watched Lucas watching the screen. His jaw clenched tighter with each image that excluded his mother.
The room went silent. Lucas, Richard stood, his face red. This is not appropriate. You called her a nobody. Lucas's voice cracked but held firm. You said she trapped my father. You said she's living off his memory. You've spent 3 years making her feel worthless, making her apologize for existing. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Lucas opened the folder. My mother is Elena Morrison, born Elena Caldwell. The Caldwell family of Boston. My great-great-grandfather built a fortune in textiles and railroads in 1892. My grandfather, James Caldwell, made his fortune in medical technology. My mother walked away from a multi-million-dollar trust fund when she was 22 because she wanted to live authentically. She chose art. She chose teaching. She chose to build a life on her own terms. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face drained of color. And me? Lucas's hand shook, but his voice didn't. I have a $15 million trust fund waiting when I turn 18, from my mother's family. More money than the entire Ashford estate. The silence was deafening. Lucas looked directly at Victoria. You called my mother poor. You offered her hand-me-down dresses. You made her work like hired help at your charity gala. But she comes from wealth you can't even imagine. She just chose not to use it. Because unlike you, she knows money doesn't make you better than anyone. That's enough. Richard moved toward the podium, but several guests blocked his path, wanting to hear more. I'm not finished. Lucas pulled out more papers. You're planning to challenge my father's will, to take me away from my mom because you think she's unfit, because she's financially unstable. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. But you're the ones who are broke. Lucas's voice hardened. I heard you. In grandfather's study, the Market Street property failed.
You're $3 million in debt. You need to sell the Kiowa house. And you were planning to use my inheritance from Dad to cover your losses. That's why you want guardianship. Not because you care about me, because you need money." The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, shocked conversations exploding like fireworks. Victoria lunged for the microphone. "He's confused. He's been fed lies by who?" Grace Holloway stood, her voice cutting through the chaos. "By his mother, who's never said a word against you? Who spent 3 years letting you abuse her because she wanted Lucas to know his father's family?" Other voices joined in. Society members who'd watched, uncomfortable, as the Ashfords systematically destroyed me at every gathering. Trevor Barrett stood, his face pale. "It's true," Trevor said quietly. "Richard told me about the debts last month. He asked if I could help. I said no." Cynthia grabbed his arm. "Trevor, shut up." "I'm done shutting up." He pulled away. "We've been cruel, systematically cruel to Elena, and I've watched it happen. We all have." Lucas held the microphone, looking small and young, and so incredibly brave. Then he turned, finding me in the crowd. "Tell them who you really are, Mom." Every eye in the hall turned to me. Victoria's shocked face, Richard's anger, Cynthia's fear, Margaret Pemberton's open-mouthed horror. 200 of Charleston's elite, waiting. My legs carried me forward. Grace released my arm. I walked to the podium, my hands shaking so badly I could barely take the microphone from my son. I looked at Lucas, at his father's eyes and his young face, at the courage it took to stand up for me when I'd never stood up for myself. Then I looked at the crowd. "My son is telling the truth," I said, my voice barely steady. "I am Elena Caldwell Morrison. I walked away from my family's wealth because I watched my mother die of cancer when I was 19 years old, surrounded by money that couldn't save her. I wanted a life that meant something beyond what I inherited. I wanted to create, to teach, to build something real." I turned to Victoria. "You asked why I stayed, why I let you treat me like I was nothing. Because my husband, your son, made me promise on his deathbed that Lucas would know his father's family, that I'd keep him connected to you. So I kept that promise. I absorbed every comment, every comparison, every reminder that I wasn't enough. For 3 years, I let you make me feel worthless because I loved Michael, and I love our son." My voice broke. "But Lucas is right. Money doesn't define worth. Character does. Integrity does. And you have neither." The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. Then Lucas stepped beside me, taking my hand. "Let's go home, Mom." We walked out of the historic Hibernian Hall together. Behind us, 200 guests erupted into chaos. Ahead of us, the Charleston night stretched open and free. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. I'm Lucas Morrison, and the morning after the gala, I woke up not feeling like a hero. I felt like I detonated a bomb in the middle of my life. Mom's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. I heard it from my room, the vibrations against her nightstand, over and over. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, replaying last night. The look on Grandmother Victoria's face when I revealed the trust fund, the gasps from the crowd, the way Mom's hand shook when she took the microphone, the way we walked out together, leaving chaos behind. I grabbed my phone. 37 text messages, most from numbers I didn't recognize. 3 from Grandfather James. "Well done, Lucas. My mother called me. She's upset. Call when you can. We need to talk. Upset. That was an understatement. I found Mom in the living room at 7 a.m., still in her pajamas, surrounded by her phone, her laptop, coffee going cold on the table. Her eyes were red. Mom? She looked up. For a moment, I thought she was angry. Then she opened her arms, and I ran into them like I was 6 instead of 10. Are you mad? I whispered into her shoulder. I don't know what I am. Proud? Horrified? Grateful? Angry? All at once. We sat on the couch. Mom's phone buzzed again. She silenced it. How many calls? I asked. Lost count. Victoria, Richard, reporters, Charleston society bloggers, Grace, Marisa. She rubbed her face. Trevor Barrett apologized, actually apologized. Then Cynthia called and screamed at me for turning his husband against her. Good, I said. They deserved it. Did they? Mom looked at me. Lucas, what you did last night, it was brave, but it was also public humiliation. You exposed their financial problems in front of 200 people. You used their weapon, shame, against them. They were going to take me away from you. I know, her voice softened, and you were protecting me. I understand that. But sweetheart, the methods we use matter. What we did last night, using wealth and public exposure to fight back, isn't that exactly what I walked away from? The game I didn't want to play? I hadn't thought about it that way. You taught me to stand up to bullies. I did. But there's standing up and there's revenge. And I'm not sure which happened last night. The doorbell rang. Mom tensed. If that's a reporter. But it wasn't. Through the peephole, I saw Grandfather James. Mom opened the door. My grandfather stood there, travel bag in hand, looking tired, but determined. I drove through the night, he said. May I come in? Mom stepped aside. They looked at each other, my mother and grandfather, so much unsaid between them. You gave him the trust fund documents? Mom said quietly. I did. Behind my back? Yes. Why? Because he's not a child you can shelter forever, Elena. He was watching you suffer. He needed to understand his heritage, his options. I believed he had a right to know. He's 10 years old, Mom's voice rose. You put that weight on a 10-year-old's shoulders.
Mom's phone buzzed. This time, she looked. David Chen, Marissa's brother, the attorney. She answered, putting it on speaker. Elena, hi. Have you seen the news? No, I've been avoiding. The Ashfords withdrew their guardianship challenge. This morning, officially. Their attorney called mine. They're dropping everything. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. David continued. There's more. Several Charleston society members have come forward supporting you. Character witnesses. People who attended the gala and were horrified by what they heard. If the Ashfords had moved forward, they would have been destroyed in court. So we won, I said, in a manner of speaking. But, Elena, there's a cost. This will be news. Local outlets are already running the story. You'll have attention you probably don't want. After the call ended, we sat in silence. What do we do now? I asked. Mom looked at me, then at Grandpa James. We have a conversation, a real one, about wealth, about choices, about what kind of people we want to be. Grandpa nodded. I'll make coffee. This might take a while. And we did. We talked for hours about my grandmother, who I'd never met, about why Mom walked away from money, about whether defending someone meant using their weapons against them, about the difference between revenge and justice.
I don't regret what you did, Mom finally said, taking my hand. But Lucas, what you did was complicated. You were brave and you hurt people, even people who hurt us first. That's not simple. That's not easy. And you need to understand that power, even used for good reasons, has consequences. Did I do the wrong thing? I asked. She thought carefully. You did a brave thing that hurt people. Even justified pain is still pain. And now we have to figure out how to move forward without becoming the kind of people who measure worth in dollars or who find satisfaction in others' suffering. So what does that mean? It means, Grandpa James said, we figure out how to live with integrity while accepting that sometimes life is messy and complicated and there aren't clean answers. Mom smiled, tired but real. It means we learn together, and we start by deciding what happens next. Outside, Charleston was waking up to the story of the Ashford Gala. Inside our small apartment, 3 generations sat together, honest and imperfect and trying. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was real. And maybe that was enough. I'm Elena Morrison, and the week after the gala, my world exploded in ways I never imagined. My phone never stopped. Reporters, society bloggers, friends crawling out of the woodwork. Grace called it deliciously chaotic. Marissa called it proof that Charleston thrived on drama. I called it exhausting. The Ashfords withdrew their guardianship challenge within 72 hours. David Chin said they had no choice. Too many witnesses, too much public exposure, too little credibility left. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Lucas watched me carefully, guilt written across his 10-year-old face. Mom, did I do the wrong thing? We sat on our couch, surrounded by our modest life, and I chose my words carefully. You did a brave thing that hurt people, even people who hurt us first. Both things can be true. My father drove down from Boston. We had the conversation we had avoided for years. Him calling out how I'd confused suffering with virtue, me defending my choice to walk away from wealth. Both of us trying to understand where love and boundaries intersect. I'm angry you gave Lucas those documents, I said. I know, but Elena, you taught him that asking for help is weakness. That's not strength, that's martyrdom. His words cut because they were true. Grace stopped by with news. 3 galleries wanted my work. Real money, real recognition. Scandal makes art valuable, she said with a grin. Might as well profit from the chaos. Trevor Barrett apologized, said he was separating from Cynthia. I enabled them by staying silent, he admitted. I'm done. Victoria texted, I'd like to speak with you. When you're ready. There are things I need to say. I stared at that text for hours. Part of me wanted to delete it. Part of me remembered that Michael had loved these people, flaws and all. Part of me wondered if healing was possible even after everything. What would Dad want? Lucas asked softly. I don't know anymore, I admitted. But maybe we get to decide what we want, not what anyone else expects. That night in the studio my father had set up, I painted. Not to prove anything, just to create. Because that's who I'd always been underneath everything else. An artist, a mother, someone learning that accepting help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. I'm Elena Morrison, and 3 months after the gala, my life looked nothing like I had imagined. The Ashford estate sold in September. Richard and Victoria moved to a modest townhouse on the outskirts of Charleston. Their bankruptcy became public record. Their fall from Charleston society was complete. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sad for what could have been. The legal settlement came through in October. David Shen negotiated a visitation schedule that protected Lucas. Supervised visits only, family counseling required. Victoria showed up to every session. She was different, quieter, humbler, broken in ways that looked like the beginning of healing. I'm sorry, she said in our 3rd session, her voice cracking. I blamed you for Michael's death because I couldn't accept that sometimes terrible things just happen. I made you the villain so I didn't have to face my own grief. It wasn't enough to erase 3 years, but it was something. Trevor maintained his relationship with Lucas, bringing Sophia and Oliver for playdates. Cynthia refused to acknowledge us, but her children didn't have to pay for adult failures. My art career took off in ways I never expected. Grace's gallery hosted my first solo exhibition in November. Pieces sold for thousands. A Charleston magazine did a profile. Local artist rises from ashes of society scandal. The attention felt strange, but the money? That helped. I accepted help from my father, a college fund for Lucas, a proper studio space, not charity, family supporting family. I kept teaching because I loved it, but the financial terror that had haunted me for years finally eased. Lucas went to therapy. So did I. We talked about courage and consequences, about defending people we love without losing ourselves in the process. "Do you regret what I did?" he asked one Sunday morning. "I regret that you had to do it," I said, "but I'm proud of who you are, brave and imperfect, and learning to navigate a world that's never simple." Now, on this December morning, Lucas and I paint side by side in my new studio. Sunlight streams through tall windows. Our apartment is still modest. I chose that, but we're not drowning anymore. We're building something real. "Mom," Lucas says, brush poised over canvas, "do you think Dad would be proud of us?" I look at my son, his father's eyes, my stubborn chin, courage that belongs to himself alone, and I think about everything we've survived, the cruelty we endured, the revelation that changed everything, the messy, complicated aftermath where nobody was purely victim or villain, just humans hurting and healing. I think your father would be proud that we stood up for ourselves without losing who we are, that we learned the difference between wealth and worth, that we figured out how to accept help while maintaining our values. "What's the difference?" Lucas asks, "between wealth and worth?" I gesture around our studio, not expensive, but filled with light and color and possibility. Wealth is what you have. Worth is who you are. Your worth isn't in that trust fund waiting for you, Lucas. It's in your character, your compassion, your courage to stand up for people you love, even when it costs you. "But the trust fund helped," he points out. "Knowing about it gave me power. It gave you information. You're the one who decided how to use it. That's the lesson, sweetheart. Money is just a tool. It's not evil or virtuous. It's what we do with it that matters." Lucas nods, returning to his painting. We work in comfortable silence, creating something beautiful together. My phone buzzes. A text from Victoria. "Lucas's birthday is next month. May I take him to lunch, just the two of us? I'd like to tell him stories about his father." I show Lucas. He looks up, considering. "Can I?" "If you want to. You set the boundaries. You decide what relationship you want with them." He nods, texting back, "Yes, but Mom picks the restaurant." I smile. He's learning. We both are. That evening, as Charleston's winter sun sets over our city, Lucas asks, "Mom, are we happy now?" I think about the question, about the chaos we survived, the pain we caused and received, the complicated reality of rebuilding after everything fell apart, about Grace's gallery showing my work, about students who need me, about my father's quiet support, about Victoria's fumbling attempts at redemption, about Trevor's apology, about this studio filled with light, about my son, brave and flawed and learning to navigate a world that's never simple. Yeah, I think we are. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but happy in a real way,